everybody, and welcome to the Applecast, episode 11, and it is December 15th, 2009, and we're going to talk about some of the main stories that I've seen online today. The first big one is Apple wins assortment of advertising awards in Adweek's Best of 2000s. Now, Adweek Media announced the winners of its Best of the 2000s advertising awards, and Apple figured prominently in a lot of the selections. Now, Apple took home a lot of top honors, including Apple itself, some of its devices, as well as Steve Jobs. And let's go through the list here, shall we? Steve Jobs was awarded Marketer of the Decade. They called Jobs a visionary, iconoclastic, and fearless. And Adweek points to his role in saving Apple in the 90s. They followed by talking about his remaking of the music and mobile phone industries and his defining achievements there. His close collaboration with the ad firm TBWA Chiat Day, and it's seen as being instrumental in positioning Apple for success. Now, Apple itself won Brand of the Decade. Apple's devotion to relentlessly improving its products and its emotional connection to consumers paved the way for its selection as Brand of the Decade. You know, with its close ties to iconic CEO Steve Jobs serving to cement its marketing prowess. So far that's two. Steve Jobs was awarded Marketeer of the Decade, or Marketer of the Decade, and Apple was awarded Brand of the Decade. Now the iPod was awarded, in following theme of the others, Product of the Decade. Likening itself to the Sony Walkman of the 1980s, Adweek cites that the iPod as redefining the MP3 player and the driving force behind iTunes as being key to Apple domination in the digital music industry. They was also awarded Campaign of the Decade, the Get a Mac ad. The ads debuted in 2006 and now number more than 60. And they are praised for personifying computers and demonstrating people's emotional connection to technology. It was a neat trick of making the brand look laid back and cool while it mercilessly skewered its rival. Apple silhouettes. Do you all remember the silhouettes with the green background and the totally black shadow of a person dancing with the only thing you could see was the white iPod and earbuds, and it was totally black, like a black silhouette against a bright pink or bright green background? They awarded them Out of Home Ad of the Decade. Apple's Silhouettes ad campaign launched in 2003 and offered a unique, consistent message of frenetic happiness. The instantly recognizable ads are also notable for achieving the nearly impossible, defining a product without showing what it even looked like up close. And the last one, Digital Campaign of the Decade, Nike. So let's add these up. Marketer of the Decade, Brand of the Decade, Product of the Decade, Campaign of the Decade, Out of Home Ad of the Decade, and Digital Campaign of the Decade. Wow. Apple totally swept the Adweek Awards, if that's what they're called, Adweek Media. Best of 2000s. Wow, that's impressive. And this is the thing about Apple that most people do not see. They don't understand this. All these designs and how they work and the way they make their products work. People say, oh, they're too expensive, they're just a PC. Well, now PCs ain't winning all these awards now, are they? What's next on the list here? Apple set to sell 10 million iPhones. A DigiTimes report about growth in smartphone noticed this morning for its citation of a market research firm's claims that Apple is set to sell 10 million iPhones this quarter, well ahead of the record 7.4 million units moved last quarter. Apple's worked to broaden its distribution reach this quarter, making forays into China, South Korea, and several other countries while adding new carrier partners in such countries as the UK and Canada. Now, Apple CEO Steve Jobs had announced at the original iPhone's unveiling in January of 2007 that the company was aiming to sell 10 million iPhones during 2008, a goal the company reached with several months to go. Now, continued acceleration to the neighborhood of 10 million iPhones sold in a single quarter demonstrates that Apple's strategy of continued expansion of geographic markets, lowered price points, and hardware and software upgrades has so far been really successful. 10 million iPhones more this quarter. 10 million more. Boy, everybody's going to have one, ain't they? Any more interesting stories? Blah, 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 blah. A lot of these stories are just stuff that's not too interesting. Oh, here's a good one. Article suggests that the iPhone is to blame for AT&T's network failure. I've been saying this for a long time. New York Times article suggests that the iPhone may be to blame for AT&T's network failures, despite the fact that AT&T fell last on the list of Consumer Reports' latest annual cell phone satisfaction survey. The author claims that independent data suggests that AT&T may have, quote-unquote, the superior network nationwide. Meanwhile, the iPhone itself may be contributing to the performance problems by causing interference that affect both its voice and data services. AT&T has recently acknowledged that service in some major U.S. cities have been performing below standards and claims that AT&T is working on it. At no time has AT&T publicly blamed Apple for any issues. John Gruber, however, questions the objectivity of the article as well as the independent sources of data, but also raises the most convincing argument against this possibility. If it is the iPhone's fault and not AT&T, why aren't iPhone users around the world having the same problems as those here in the U.S.? Because it's not the iPhone's fault. And when I say it's the iPhone's fault, I mean that by the fact that iPhone users use more bandwidth than any other cell phone or smartphone user. And it's just crippling their network. What else? Ooh, sketchy evidence of iPhone 3.13 and iPhone 4.0 operating system. Boy Genius points to some sketchy evidence found in their browser logs that seems to suggest iPhone OS 3.13 and 4.0 are being used in the wild. The reason we label this as sketchy is that the ability to fake user agents is trivial. Many browser add-ons let you simply type in whatever you'd like into the user agent field that's being reported. In this case, we also found similar user agent strings in our logs, though they were not originating out of an Apple IP address, but instead out of somewhere in Florida. Little else can be said about the finding. iPhone 4.0 would suggest Apple is prepping a major OS update. iPhone 3.0 was just released back in July. A full version number upgrade would indicate a major release update. And now this one is really interesting. I think the Google phones and the Droid phones and the Android phones, I think they're popular amongst the tech crowd, but amongst the whole cell phone users as a whole, they're not even a blip on their radar. This story is relating to Google's why I say that. Official Google phone coming in January of 2010. Now, TechCrunch, which I take everything they say with a grain of salt, TechCrunch reports that Google has begun testing a new Android device with their employees. The new device is said not to be just another Android-based phone, but the official Google phone that's been rumored for some time. This new phone is said to be a no-compromises version of an Android phone and has been reported to include these details. Sold as an unlocked GSM phone, so in the U.S., T-Mobile and possibly AT&T. Android, we will have Android 2.1. It will use Snapdragon chip, quote-unquote, really fast. Well, that's technical. High-resin OLED screen, a little bit thinner than the iPhone. 2 mics, one on the back to reduce background noise. Weirdly large camera. Touchscreen keyboard. Voice-to-text dictation. Now, the Google phone is said to be due for release in January of next year. The Snapdragon chip appears to be based on the same generation of ARM processors as the iPhone 3GS, though could be running at a higher clock speed. Apple, of course, is rumored to be working on their next generation iPhone, though it is not expected for release until middle of next year. So I would look at whatever this Google phone does. I would say the new iPhone will be faster and better. I'm not impressed with these Google phones. I'm just not. Google should stick to what they're good at. Oh, Apple rolls out new App Store look. Now Apple's rolling out a new look to their App Store. or rather, Apple is rolling out a new look to their App Store individual app pages, which brings it in line with the rest of iTunes 9 design that was revealed a few months ago. If you remember that the App Store section, when you went to the individual app pages, nothing had really changed. The style hadn't changed to the new iTunes 9 yet. Now, the changes will be of primary interest to App Store developers who rely on the App Store pages to drive sales. Now, changes that may impact developers include much larger icons are shown, multiple screenshots are more obvious to the viewer, the app description is tourniqueted to the first 2 lines by default, while users can expand to see the rest of the description, kind of like on YouTube. Many will likely not. This places much more importance on the first 2 lines of the app's description. And more apps by the same developer are listed automatically. So in general, there seems to be a bigger focus on the icons/screenshots on the first glance of the page. The changes seem to be propagating to the App Store as of the 11th of December, so all the pages might not have been updated yet. Those are really the top stories for this date. As you can see, some of my podcasts can go up to 30 minutes if there's a if there's a lot going on in the news. But on a slow day like today, where there's not a whole lot going on in the news, and what is going on isn't really important and exciting, the show's kind of shortened down a little bit, 10-15 minutes. So those are the top headlines, Mac rumors, stories. Well, there's a couple more here. Let's go over. Fall Mac shipments up 21%. Man, that's pretty good. I mean, when you got a 4 or 5% market share worldwide, that's pretty good for worldwide. That's quite a lot of bit of people. New retail sales data show that Mac sales were up 21% year over year in the months of October and November, positioning Apple for a potentially strong December to close out 2009. New data from MPD Group was acquired by analyst Gene Munster of Piper Jaffray. In a note to investors issued Monday afternoon, Munster said he still believes that Mac sales for the quarter will be between 2.9 and 3 million. But, he said, much can change because roughly 50% of all Mac sales for the quarter occur in the month of December. November was the first full month of sales for the new Macs, which debuted in October. Desktop Mac sales alone were up 74% year over year in October and November, while portable Macs were up 5% increase. While it remains early, it appears the new iMacs are driving Mac sales in the December quarter, and we are incrementally more confident in slight unit upside in the December quarter. If Mac sales hold strong, Apple could be looking at yet another record quarter for sales. In the September frame, the company sold 3.05 million Macs, helping its profits rise to $1.67 billion. That was a 17% year-over-year increase in sales. MPD data also shows that iPod sales for October and November are down 11% year-over-year. That would place overall sales for the quarter at between 19 million and 20 million. Again, here, Munster notes that it's too early to call, as more than half of all iPods sold in the quarter are during the month of December. So Piper Jaffray has maintained its overweight rating for Apple stock with a price targeted at $277 a share. Yes, that's great news. And who says music, iTunes, iPod, and iPhone is what makes Apple its money? Bull crap. Looks like they make plenty of their money off Mac sales, if you ask me. Maybe there's one more story here. Apple CEO Steve Jobs named finalist for Time Person of the Year. Everybody go out to Time Magazine online and vote for Steve Jobs. Time Magazine will announce its annual Person of the Year this week, and the magazine has revealed its top 7 finalists, with Apple co-founder Steve Jobs making the cut. Now, I'm assuming Obama will win, just because they've had some pretty nasty people as Person of the Year before in the past, back in the 30s and stuff. So I'm assuming Obama will take this by default, even if he don't get the votes. That's just my opinion. The Time magazine issued its narrowed list just this week prior to the reveal scheduled to be made Wednesday on NBC's Today Show. So in addition to Jobs, the finalists are, of course, like I said, President Obama, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke, yuck, Nancy Pelosi, Ben Bernanke, U.S. General Stanley McChrystal, Olympic gold medalist Usain Bolt, and the Chinese worker. While Time's editors have already made their decision, readers are encouraged to chime in by voting for their selection. So what does that mean? They've already made their decision, so our votes don't matter? Jobs was named CEO of the decade by Fortune in November. The publication heralded Jobs for his role in turning Apple into a groundbreaking leader in the technology realm and for making his company the most valuable in all of Silicon Valley. Those same accomplishments were acknowledged by Time as pros for his being named Person of the Year. The magazine also noted that the iPhone App Store surpassed 1 billion downloads, 2 billion as of September. Users can rank each person's importance, and as of Monday afternoon, Jobs carried a score of 49 out of 100. The magazine also listed reasons why Jobs should not be named Person of the Year. His health problems keeping him away from the company for 6 months of 2009, AT&T's network instability, and the arrival of computers like the Palm Pre and devices with Google Android. So this is what I have a problem with. How can the arrival of competitors like Palm Pre and devices with Google Android be a reason why Jobs shouldn't be Person of the Year? You tell me what the Palm Pre coming to the market or Google Android coming to the market has anything to do with Jobs being Person of the Year. Okay? And another thing, what does his health problems have to do with him being Person of the Year? What, he's got sick, and because he got sick and had a liver transplant and couldn't make it to work for 6 months, that's a reason to not name him Person of the Year? Hell's bells, if you survive a liver transplant and come back to work in 6 months, I would think that would be a reason to be named Person of the Year. And the third reason they named Jobs should not be named Person of the Year: AT&T's network instability. Now, what does Jobs have to do with AT&T's network instability? If AT&T's network is bad, that ain't got nothing to do with Jobs being Person of the Year. It might have a lot to do with AT&T not making Company of the Year or not making Customer Satisfaction of the Year. But you tell me what AT&T's performance has to do with Stephen Jobs being Person of the Year. Not Businessman of the Year, not Company of the Year, but Person of the Year. Are you telling me the reasons they listed why Jobs should not be named Person of the Year is because of his health, because AT&T's network instability, and because of the arrival of competitors? Oh, some competitors arrived, like Google Android. How is that Stephen Jobs' fault, and how should that be marked against him as Person of the Year? Oh, AT&T's network's unstable. I guess that's Apple's fault. Oh, he had a liver transplant and survived and came back to work in 6 months and give us a keynote. Oh, he can't be Person of the Year. Those are the most horrible reasons to list as why somebody should not be named Person of the Year. What do any of those reasons have to do with somebody being Person of the Year? Health problems? Or surviving major health problems? A totally separate company that you don't own or manage? Their instability of their service reflects on you as a person? And also the arrival of Google Android reflects on Steve Jobs as a person? Now, I'm calling you out, Time magazine. How is this possible? How is the arrival of Google Android or the Palm Pre reflect on Stephen Jobs as a person? How does AT&T's network instability reflect on Stephen Jobs as a person? Huh? You tell me this. Why are these things even considered why he's Person of the Year? It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous, and I'm going to raise Cain about this if they cite these as reasons he didn't get Person of the Year. That is just absolutely blatant bullcrap. So those are our top stories. Write Time a letter. Guys, email them, write them a letter or whatever you can do and tell them AT&T's network instability, the arrival of Google Android, and his liver transplant has nothing to do with him being Person of the Year, and them listing those reasons as why he should not be Person of the Year is horrible. And I want you all to speak up and voice your opinion about this. It's crap. Write them and tell them. Health problems, AT&T, and Google Android have nothing to do with Stephen Jobs as a person. So this has been December 15th, episode 11 of the Applecast. I hope you all have a good week, and I might be back later in the week with another podcast if anything great or spectacular happens. And if not, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.